I'm from Brazil. I'm Laís, and I'm an architect and urban planner. And my history with the gender lenses in urban planning started when I was still pursuing my bachelor degree in architecture and urban planner here in Brazil. I used to live very close by from my university. It was like a 10-minute walk. And I usually would go by foot, obviously. And once I've experienced a very awkward situation going to the classes I would have very early in the morning, and then it could easily have been something really worse. And it took me a long time to understand how bad things could have been when I was living that. And then I realized that urban planning and gender should be related topics. And when I talked about this at my university, everybody was like, "No, stop that! You're making things up. You're trying to connect. You're forcing to connect things that are not related. You're trying to put gender on everything. You're reading too much about feminism, and if you're trying to put gender on things that are not supposed to be gender focused." And I would not accept that. And I decided that I would prove to those people that they were wrong, that urban planning and gender are connected things. So that's when I decided to focus my bachelor thesis on the connection and the relationship between gender and urban planning. At this moment, I found out that I conducted a research. I thought it was going to be a little research or something really basic, but then things started to grow, and I realized that people really wanted to talk about this. And I thought it was going to be something that I would only talk to my friends, and I would discuss this a little bit within my university walls. But then I realized that people that I didn't even know would want to talk to me about that, because these women are afraid all the time. We are afraid all the time. Every time we put our foot outside of our houses, we are afraid of being harassed, of being raped, of something really bad happened to us. And some of us are safe in our places, in our homes, but some of us are not. So even our homes are not safe, and then we put our foot in the cities. We go to our cities, we explore our urban environment. Be happy enough if I would. Sorry.
Sorry, we lost you for a second, but now you're back. Yes.
Okay. So I just lost myself. Sorry. So I realized that I wouldn't be happy enough if I would only research about that. I knew that research is very important, and I'm still doing it at my master's, but I realized that it wouldn't be enough for me to understand how gender and how urban planning could relate to each other. So I decided to found In Cities, which is a nonprofit organization here in Brazil that we founded in 2018, at the end of 2018. We started working in 2019. But the idea of In Cities is that we are a network for inclusive cities. We realized that inclusive urban environments would not be only focused on gender, but we would like to be this to make sure that gender would be. My internet connection is unstable, it says here, but I hope you're all hearing me well. Sorry. So we realized that gender would not be the only thing that we should focus to create inclusive environments, urban environments, but we would prioritize that, because that's what we were studying. But we realized that we could not only research about this. We need the data, we need the research, but we would have to work with different approaches to make sure that gender and other inclusive topics were discussed inside municipalities and inside private operations and enterprises and in schools. And because we realized that even us who were inside the urban discussion, we are discussing this within our universities. We're not discussing about gender. We're not discussing about creating inclusive cities. So that's when we decided that in cities would focus on 4 pillars. The first one would be awareness, to make sure that people are aware of the problem, because many people would say that that's not a real issue, that we should not be discussing those kind of things. The second one would be mobilization, to make sure that we can make as much noise as we can. The third one is research, because that's where it started, and we need data to prove that those problems and those issues are relevant. Advocacy. Right now, we have impacted more than 20,000 people on different on-site and online activities throughout those 2 years that we've been working. We have around almost 200 volunteers around Brazil, around all over the country, within more than 40 cities. Now with the pandemic, things are a little bit weird, because we could not work the way we would like to, especially on mobilization, and sometimes with research we've been having some trouble. So we've been focusing on advocacy and on awareness. And we've been working on 2 project bills to implement here in the state of Paraná, where I'm based. And we've been realized that things have changed in the last years. People are more open and more willing to talk about urban planning through gender lenses. But times now here are very hard. We're having difficult political issues that makes social work very hard in the country. So we've been facing some obstacles. But I feel that in this specific topic, we've advanced because people are now discussing this. 5 years ago, people were not even discussing this. People would refuse to talk about this, to talk about gender within urban environments. And now we are making this a very sensible and a very discussed and a very open topic. So people are discussing this not only within the university walls, but as well as in the streets. And people are understanding that our concerns as women are different from men's concerns walking on the street and experiencing our urban environments. We have a lot to do. We still have a long path to run and a lot of research to do. I see here that we have lots of researchers from Brazil that study gender very hard in terms of mobility and in terms of access to housing and to land, that are very important issues here in Brazil and I guess in all Latin America. And but I feel that we are going through gold path now. I don't know. I feel that we are walking on. I'm trying to be very hopeful, and I feel that we have a long way to go, but it's a good way to go. It feels like we have a light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, that's it. I guess I'm reaching my 10 minutes. So thank you guys very much for the invitation, and I'm very happy that we are having this discussion. I feel that the awareness pillar is very important. It's very important for us to discuss, to talk, to share our problems, and to make sure that everyone is listened to, and that we have an open space for that, not only here in Brazil or in Latin America, but in the whole world. We can discuss within different realities. Thank you, guys.
Yes. Thank you, Lais, for sharing. Just to recap, the 4 pillars are awareness, that in cities address is awareness, mobilization, research, and the fourth one?
Advocacy.
Advocacy, of course. Yeah. Take action. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing with the important work that you do. So we move now with Andrea from Colombia. And just briefly again, for everyone that is connecting, because we have some people that just connected, we have the three panelists today from Brazil, Colombia, and Sweden. And now we're going to have Colombia coming up. And Andrea, if you have any questions about for the panelists, please drop them up on the chat. Can be in English, Portuguese, or Spanish. We're going to have a brief Q&A afterwards. Andrea, welcome. The floor is yours if you want to briefly present yourself and then share your case with all of us.
Okay, thank you. My name is Andrea. Thank you so much to Impact Hub and the Swedish Institute for the invitation. For me, I'm really glad of sharing some reflections about gender and cities with Lais, Elin, Gabriela, with all of you. To begin, I want to say that my professional training was not oriented to city planning, and I am not an urban planner. I am a cyclist and a pedestrian. Flanus, as Lauren Ilkin said, and I began to recognize the problem that women have in our mobility and in our way of move in territory precisely by moving on a bicycle, walking and observing around. I mention this because I believe that not only is a professionalization issue to planning a city, also I believe that the experiences are also valuable and recognize the needs we have, women and men, boys and girls, and elderly, to move around the city and fully live the right to the city. So as a cyclist and a pedestrian woman, I was acquiring a special knowledge that I was taking to professional practice. I studied literature and I did a master's degree in philosophy that taught me to read deeply, and I put both things at the service of building a professional profile that would allow me to perform at work. It seems anecdotal, it is, but I want to highlight the importance of experience to planning a city. In a webinar, I heard to Paula Soto Villagran. Paula is a PhD for anthropological science and teacher of the sociology department from the Metropolitan Autonomous University in Iztapalapa in Mexico. She said that mobility is a fundamental practice of human life, but is not only an expression of gender inequalities. In mobility, these gender inequalities are reproduced. But how we can recognize those inequalities in real life? Carolina Criado Perez in Invisible Women, she makes visible how the world has been designed, planned, and built for men and by men, ignoring women's needs, the anatomy of our body, the realities that affect us in the public and private spaces, in the design of things, focus on male anatomies and other realities that has affected us in a negative and invisible way. Since I read it, I could not reread the world and urban life or any city project in a different way to recognize the information that we have, what we know about the way that men and women move and live in the world. I mean, information and data disaggregated by gender or sex. Also, in another book, in Feminist City, Leslie Kerr wrote that the city has been set up to support and facilitate the traditional gender roles of men, and with men's experiences as the norm, ignoring the day-to-day experiences of the city life of women. She called this the city of men. So in transportation planning, this is not different. And in Latin America, realities with these deeply patriarchal societies is not different either. Being women in public space, for us, we live an extra reality, the fear of sexual violence, fear of walking and being harassed, ride a bike and being harassed, using public transport and being harassed. And in addition of these fears, we face other serious problems like road unsafety and social insecurity, among others. That's it, to understand that all this happened to us, to all women, and affects the way we move every day, our daily decisions about what to wear, what route to take, what type of vehicle to use when we can afford it, because all these decisions require spending more money in order to feel safer. At what time we should come back home, because all we know that at night, all insecurity possibilities increase. And this is a call to action to see the world and analyze how we live in the world, how we move in our cities through gender lenses. What I mean is that planning mobility from a gender perspective gives us the possibility to see inequalities and how these inequalities are also reproduced in all the mobilities, as Paula Soto said. If there is no data about how women we move, this lacks results in distorted analysis, imprecise analysis of the differential mobility needs between men and women, assuming that all people move the same way, or that a city is planned under a false idea of neutrality that has favored the dominant subjects of this mobility and not all people. And this is further deep when we cross gender analysis with other realities like race, sexual orientation, economic situation, and others. So the difference implied that transport is not gender neutral, and traditional transport planning creates heavily marked gender gaps that can limit women's access to urban services, education, jobs opportunities, healthcare, political participation, among others. And findings suggest that these gaps are associated to social role, gender roles that eventually cause different mobility needs and patterns between men and women. And in general, the mobility surveys revealed that women make more daily trips associated with care, especially walking or using public transport. Also, it is well known that women's trips are made in trip changing. In some cases, this implies a large average travel time and perceived risk and public space differently. And on the other hand, as I said before, women are the majority of victims of gender-based violence in the public space and public transport, which further implies increasing time and financial costs due to the strategies they adopt to respond of this violence. So city planning has historically ignored experiences, motives, and modes of travel of the diverse women. And this has caused and deepened gender inequality in the use of public space and become more acute when other categories such as ethnicity, age group, sexual orientation, migratory status, functional diversity, and socioeconomic status are considered. And these biases in urban planning have built a public space mostly tied to the needs of the private and motorized vehicles, which increase inequity, motorization, traffic, road insecurity, and urban expansions associated with productive activities and not to care activities. So the challenge is to recognize the differential travel needs of men and women. The sexual division of labor has influenced mobility patterns and defined two pendulum trips for men associated with productive activities like work and study, and chain trips for women associated with reproductive and care activities like housework or take care of another person. According to Women and Transportation in Bogotá, the account from the Espacio and WRI, the roles and social imagination associated with gender influence people's practice and habits, generating difference in the way men and women mobilize in the city. This difference between men and women do not relate only to transport, but also to travel motives. Carolina Criado, in Invisible Women, said that a typical female shift pattern involves, for example, dropping children at school before going to work, taking an older relative to the doctor, and doing the shopping on the way home. This is called chain of movement, a mobility pattern that has been observed in women around the world and that consists of several interconnected short trips. In 2009, the Spanish architect Inés Sánchez de Madariaga introduced the concept of mobility of care to identify the need to understand in a differential way those daily trips associated with unpaid activities of care, like the trips to carry adult individuals or children, the elderly, people with disease or disabilities, and in general, the functioning of the household, the community, or even the environment. Mobility surveys, which are usually origin destination surveys, have not considered the multiplied trips that women daily do associated with the mobility of care, which are necessary for the reproduction of life, as Sánchez de Madariaga said. The care trips are hidden within other categories, are not only counted because they are dispersed trips. Thus, experts consider that they make planning more difficult and are less efficient when choosing the means of transport. Also, the they undervalue these trips because they lack the proper data to account for them. So analyzing the mobility of care allows an improved description of mobility to recognize the needs of women and diverse population based on gender roles. This analysis will allow to design more equitable and efficient transport system, propose public transport policies, reduce gender gaps in access to transport, and build transport system to better respond to the needs of women. I know that I only have 10 minutes, but I want to finish saying that people who carry out mobility of care are exposed to more than one of the characteristics of transport poverty. So the transport poverty affects more women than men. And I think that I can just finish here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea. I think you could continue with this topic. I think the majority of us are like just shaking our heads, no? Like, just like a question. I mean, we are 27 people here, and the only thing that could cross in my mind is that raise your hands, everyone that is here, if you've experienced harassment on either public spaces, public transport, or that you have to change routes, spend more time moving, crossing the street, feeling insecure. I mean, I think it would be maybe 80% or 90% from who we are, of all of us that are here. But yes, but it's so interesting that it's not only that mental toll that you have on your head or trying to plan routes and change routes, but also I mean, I didn't realize what you said of the economic toll as well, and time that yes, we could go forever on this topic. So everyone, please, if you have more questions that we're about this issue that we all share, please drop them up on the chat. We're gonna do a Q&A at the end. We're gonna have 10 minutes to answer some questions. But thank you so much, Andrea, for sharing your experience on this. Our next guest, final guest, I was gonna say from Sweden. She's from Sweden, but she's connecting all the way from Nairobi. Elin Andersdotter Fabre. She's gonna present her case on Her City Initiative. It's a program in the UN, and the pilot program started here in Sweden, but I'll let her continue on this. Elin, the floor is yours. And if you want to share your screen, if you have a presentation, please do so. And yes, welcome.
Thank you, Gabriela. Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? My Spanish is really crap, but I do understand what you're saying in the breakout rooms. But so this will be, as you said before, in English. So my name is Elin Andersdotter Fabre, and I'm from UN Habitat, which is, I think in Spanish is UN Habitat, which is the UN Agency for Sustainable Cities, mainly. And I'm from the Global Public Space Program, and we have initiated Her City, which is a digital toolbox that we developed together with the Swedish think tank, Global Utmaning, and some of the partners actually that are part of the urban challenges that you're participating in. So I would like to, you hear what I'm saying? Yeah. So I would like to share a bit, some basic information about the Her City Toolbox to show you how it works, and perhaps that could be useful for you in your projects. So I'll try to share my screen. And Gabriela, how is it with time? Because I have a 5-minute presentation and I have a 5-minute video. So you let me know when the presentation is done, if we do the video as well, or if we just skip it and I can send it in the chat. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, 10 minutes, I think it is. Yeah.
It's really up to you. So now I'm sharing my screen, right? Am I?
Yes.
Good. So here you have it. Hang on, I'll take myself away. So the Her City Toolbox, as I said, hang on, here it is. It's an initiative by UN Habitat and Global Utmaning, I already said, and it's financed by the Swedish Innovation Agency. And we developed this again with a range of different partners. So it's really a collaborative effort. I can't, underline that enough. And we work with white architects, with Block by Block Foundation, which is Minecraft, the computer game for urban planning, etc., etc. So if it wasn't for like 100 experts, more or less, this toolbox wouldn't exist. I would really want to stress that. And we have had, participants and multi-stakeholders from private sector, public sector, research, civil society, citizens, really contributing to this range of good tools that we managed to put together. So our mission is really to promote girls and young women's participation in urban planning and design in the current processes of cities. And as you've been underlining before, I mean, the ultimate goal is to create sustainable cities, but that are inclusive, where everyone has their place. So our vision is really that involving girls and young women, I will say, in urban development will make the city better for everyone, not just for the girls and the women, because girls plan and design with this kind of diversity lens in mind. So they think a lot about other groups in society besides themselves. I mean, as you've been, mentioning before here, participation is obviously key. How can we set up these participatory processes? I think we agree on that it is important, but we don't really know how to do it. And the knowledge, both when it comes to research and practice, is kind of limited on how to really do good participatory processes. Everyone says it's expensive, it takes a lot of time, but the Her City Toolbox is really about showing officials and other urban actors or citizens that, I mean, you can do it and it doesn't have to be that hard. And we try to put everything in a box for you. So our slogan is kind of, if we let citizens that are rarely heard be the experts, our cities and communities will become more inclusive, equal, and sustainable. So this is basically what we imagine a Her City, a fictive Her City could look like in any part of the world. You see it's like dirty, congestion, construction, it's dark, you have lots of goofy guys hanging around. And I mean, I will not echo what our previous speakers have said about mobility, but we totally agree with everything that's been said. But here are a few other statistics about the gender gap. So 60% of women feel unsafe in public space, up to, I mean, it could even be more in some spaces, as you were talking about, Gabriela. And we also see a huge gender divide when it comes to digital technology, like access to internet and just owning a mobile phone. Other statistics, only 23% of women in governmental positions worldwide. So why did we really kind of took initiative to the Her City Toolbox? First of all, because we know, and you know probably, that by 2050, more than 70% of the world's population will live in cities. And this is really a shift. It shifted like almost 10 years ago. The world became majoritarian urban. So more than half of the world's population live in cities by now, but 70% will do so in just the coming generation. So it's really something that we need to deal with. And with this rapid urbanization comes lots of other challenges, inequality on top of it. And we also know then that the most vulnerable in this rapid urbanization processes are young women in socioeconomically vulnerable areas. And again, as I said a bit before, I mean, there is recent research, even if it's not very, I mean, we don't have a lot of research done yet, but we know that these kind of participation create opportunities for more inclusive, equal and sustainable urban development. But we need to build on the little knowledge that exists in theory and in practice, and come together and really put everything on the table and jointly use that knowledge. And we work also, I can say that as underlining that we work a lot with the local implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. So we see that if you adopt this kind of approach, like the Her City approach, or it could be a similar one, you actually contribute to many of the SDGs simultaneously, like the one on health, on gender equality, obviously, but on reducing inequalities when it comes to other discriminatory grounds. Obviously, sustainable cities, but also building really like trust and good governance and good institutions in society. And I mean, the bottom line is we're talking about partnerships, right? So bear that in mind, that, I mean, these small projects on the ground, adopting these kind of approaches can really contribute to global development goals. I think I can just go through this very, very quickly, but but as Gabriela mentioned before, this started off as a project, Urban Goals Movement, that was really mapping methods and tools mainly from the global south. And then they were tested in Fittja in Botkyrka in Sweden as kind of a process. And in 2019, we got a second phase of financing, so we could really make sure that this became a digital toolbox that would be accessible for everyone, no matter where they live in the world. COVID came and we were really forced to work even more digitally with this toolbox. So now all the tools are digital, actually, even if from the beginning we kind of had the aspiration that perhaps 75% would be, but now we were forced to make sure that you can run these kind of processes despite COVID, because I mean, the public spaces and our cities that they work for the most vulnerable is more and more important now, even than before, even though it's difficult for us to meet to run these processes. The toolbox in a nutshell is really about, as I told you, supporting urban development from a goals perspective. And the toolbox guides urban actors through this kind of step-by-step methodology, even if it's very flexible. So you could, choose the parts that's important for you. And what is important to underline is that the platform is free and open access. Is actually even open code, so anyone could actually copy the website and, for example, translate it into their language if you wanted. And what we tried to do from UN Habitat and Global Utmaning side is to facilitate this ongoing dialogue between the professionals and the citizens in various projects all over the world. So where do we stand today? This is basically it. So we run 10 partnership projects in different on different continents, 10 more or less. We have projects in Flemingsberg in Sweden, part of the Urban Challenges, but we also have projects in Gaza and the West Bank, in Beirut, here in Nairobi, in Johannesburg, in Lima, just to mention a few. But we also have now, I mean, it's one month and a half since we launched the toolbox on International Women's Day. We have 60 projects, independent projects that we kind of follow from the side, but that are using the Her City methodology and tools independently. And I checked today, we have 430 users. And this is constantly growing with representatives from more than 40 countries today. So here are all the connection details you need. hercity.unhabitat.org, and you could follow us on social media, Her City or Her City Toolbox, depending on which one.